Hey guys, Justin with 1791 bringing you episode 4 of the Built to Survive podcast with an extremely exciting guest. Probably the foremost expert, if one of the foremost experts, if not the foremost expert in use of deadly force, specifically use of deadly force law, Mr. Massad Ayoob. Hey Mas, how's it going, man?
Hey, good to see you again, Justin.
Good to see you. You and I actually have a bit of a shared work history that will be really interesting to get into later on the podcast. But before I do, you need no introduction, but I'm going to read you an introduction anyways, so that our guests can get to know you a little bit better. So, Massad Ayoob has been a handgun editor of Guns Magazine and law enforcement columnist for American Handgunner since 1970s. And has published thousands of articles in gun magazines, martial arts publications, and law enforcement journals. He is the author of some of 20 books on firearms, self-defense, and related topics, including In the Gravest Extreme and Deadly Force, widely considered to be authoritative texts on the topic of use of lethal force. The winner of Outstanding American Handgunner in the Year of the Year award in 1998, Moss has won several state regional handgun shooting championships. Ayoob was the first person to earn the title five-gun master in the International Defensive Pistol Association. He served 19 years as the chair of the Firearms Committee of the American Society of Law Enforcement Trainers, several years as a member of the Advisory Board of International Law Enforcement Educators and Trainers Association. In addition to teaching those groups, he also taught for the International Association for Law Enforcement Firearms Instructors and International Homicide Investigator seminars. Moss has received judicial recognition as an expert witness for the courts in weapons and shooting classes since 1979, and served as a fully sworn and empowered part-time police officer for 43 years. Mostly at supervisory rank. Ayoob founded the Lethal Force Institute in 1981 and served as its director until 2009. Now trains through the Massad Ayoob Group. He appeared on CLE TV delivering continuing legal education for attorneys through the American Law Institute and American Bar Association, and has been retained to train attorneys to handle deadly force cases through the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. Ayoob served for 2 years as co-vice chair as Forensics Evidence Committee and National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, and also appeared on an episode of Personal Defense TV on Sportsman's Channel. Currently was elected as president of the Second Amendment Foundation in 2020. Mr. Massad Ayoob, welcome, sir. Thank you.
Good to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Yes, absolutely. It's my honor. Do you have anything else that I can add to your intro before we get into it?
No, my ego's big enough.
Oh, well, sir, you have a level of experience and expertise that warrants a little bit of an ego, I would say. So, all right. So episode 4, I always do these kind of dopey warm-up questions just to kind of like knock the rust off and kind of get the conversation flowing. So you'll have to, I like to give my guests the same questions. So the first question is, pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Never. It's an abomination.
All right. I'm seeing a very strong theme here. I've only had one guy say yes so far, and he was a seer instructor, so he's eaten some pretty nasty stuff. So, all right, favorite movie?
I told a psychologist friend of mine once one of my favorite movies was Freebie and the Bean. I asked, what does that mean? He said, it means you're nuts.
Oh, man. How about favorite book? I know you're a pretty well-read guy.
I would say the 1947 Stoger Gun Bible that was in my room when I was a little kid growing up, and I read before I went to bed more than any other book. I still have it somewhere.
Very cool. Very cool. How about this? This is one of my favorite questions. Most influential historical figure in your opinion?
Is it, I mean, in our world of the gun or just the world in general?
Anything in general.
Quite possibly Harry Truman. He was a credentialed historian, ordinary guy who rose to great power, had to make incredibly far-reaching decisions and generally made the right decision.
Yeah, I actually I recently read a book called "Killing the Rising Sun" by Bill O'Reilly, and obviously Truman had a big part in that book as well. It was interesting to learn a lot more about him. So that's a good one.
Truman, by the way, was one of us. Hell of a gun collector. A bunch of his guns are on display at the Truman Library in Independence, Missouri. And
Very cool.
I was told that he kept next to his bed loaded Smith & Wesson Victory Model serial number V1 that had been presented by the head of Smith & Wesson, and they had to unload it after his death.
Wow. I don't know about you and your opinion, but I don't know that I would keep that one in particular at the ready for my self-defense weapon, because like that would hurt real bad for that to go into an evidence locker for a long time. Serial number V1. Oh my goodness. Cool. Well, hey, from here, we got the warm-up questions out of the way. Let's just kind of go into freestyle mode. Please tell the audience a little bit more about you. Maybe we'll start at like childhood and kind of going up through your career. So whenever you're ready, sir.
Well, only son of a very athletic man. Born with asthma, so the doctor said no gym, no dojo, et cetera, et cetera. And when I expressed an interest in guns, my dad was kind of like, holy crap, there's something masculine my kid can do. So he indulged me in that. I started with a .22 rifle at age 4, handguns at 9. Got a little interesting when I was 12. I started working in the family jewelry store. And my dad, who had been in one shooting, he had different guns staged throughout the place. And he said, look, you may not be able to reach any of them. So if you're going to work in here, you're going to carry one on your person. And I had the gun part down, but I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I may not be the smartest 12-year-old in existence, but I'm going to try not to be the stupidest. This is for real. I'm going to be carrying a loaded .45, expected to shoot human beings to death under certain circumstances, and it's not a game. Kid's going to need some rules here. So the chief of police in the city was one of my dad's customers, a couple of lawyers, one very patient judge. And they all filled me in on what you needed to know. And they set me on a path I recommend to all my students and readers: legal libraries. The general public thinks legal libraries are just for attorneys or law students. No, that's just the ones in the law offices and at the law schools. Almost every county is going to have a public legal library that's open to the public for free. Don't bring your gun, it's courthouse property. And I tell them start with what we call colloquially the black letter law, the state statutes and the state codes. Go from there into the CJS, the Corpus Juris Secundum, CORPUS, next word JURIS, if anyone's taking notes. Next word SECUNDUM. It translates from Latin as the body of the law. And it's not the law for dummies or anything, but anybody fluent in English and familiar with the topic and interested in it can understand it. Start looking for past just the elements of the black letter law, what is and is not legal, into concepts like disparity of force, retreat requirements, things of that nature. That led me to what lawyers today call the Bible of homicide law, the book Warren on Homicide. The thing literally is the size of a King James Bible.
I'm actually going to be, I'm taking notes now.
Not every library will have it, but I'm told it may be online now.
You said it's Warren what?
On Homicide. And I remember sitting there 12, 13, 14 years old, furiously taking notes. We lived in the capital city, so I had access to the state legal library, which was awesome. And it didn't occur to me till later, what did the librarians think about this young teenage kid coming in here reading up on homicide law, right? But I remember thinking then, holy crap. There are all kinds of books about how to win a gunfight that went back to like the 19th century. There was nothing that said, here's what you can and can't do. Here's when you can point a gun at somebody, And it's not felony aggravated assault, and it's not brandishing, and it's not this, and it's not that. I remember thinking, damn it, somebody ought to write a book about this side of it. And if nobody has when I grow up, maybe I will. And ironically, by the time I grew up, nobody had, so I did. My first book on it came out in 1980, In the Gravest Extreme. All these years later, still sells, not because I was a great writer or anything, but because no matter what they tell you about changing laws, homicide law, the law of deadly force, is one of the most stable, mature bodies of law that we have in American jurisprudence. Along the way, I'd become a police officer in 1972. I'd started competing in my teens, had some good luck here and there. Won the state championship for cops when I was 25, I think. Started out early as an instructor, and that set me on an odyssey to all the training schools I could get to. And that's also when I started debriefing the gunfight survivors. And that's when I started seeing the stuff you never saw in books. The guys experiencing tunnel vision, auditory exclusion, tachypsychia, the sense of things going in a slow motion during the fight, and altered perceptions like that. Started teaching cops in 1972, private citizens in 1981. Ray Chapman, the first world champion of the combat pistol, kind of took me under his wing. I studied with him at Chapman Academy, eventually becoming a co-instructor there. And that was where we did our first, we called it the Gravest Extreme course at that time, named after my book, in 1981. And that went over well. And Ray said, look, I love teaching my side of it, the how to shoot side. People really need that when to shoot side. You ought to open a school and teach on the side. And I thought, hey, might be fun. I was, at that time, my primary occupation was writing for law enforcement professional journals, martial arts magazines, and gun magazines. And that involved a lot of travel. And I figured, hey, cool, I'll start teaching. It'll be a week at home. That turned out to be a miscalculation on my part. By 1982, I was doing it full time and traveling more than ever. Wound up basically for the rest of my life, full-time trainer, part-time cop, as you mentioned, for 43 years, and part-time everything else. Today, part-time writer and part-time expert witness. Now, I started that in 1979, so about 4.5 decades now. And that is where you really learn the dirty tricks, the strategy and stuff. The saying is among the attorneys, law school teaches you the law. Trial tactics, trial strategy is something you learn on the job in the courtroom or in CLE, continuing legal education, from other people in the field who've experienced a lot of those cases. I found that very instructive. And that is one of the things I really teach from in the classes that I teach on when to use deadly force, how to mentally prepare yourself for it, and how to handle the aftermath. So much training begins with a draw, ends with a last shot, and you think you're going to ride off into the sunset like a cowboy movie. And I've seen the cases that evolve out of totally justified shootings drag on for years and years and years. You've got 3 courts to deal with. There's criminal court, there's civil court with the lawsuits, and the third court that a lot of people miss, the court of public opinion.
Yeah.
If you win the gunfight and you win the trial. If they have painted you as some kind of a monster and your side has not been able to counter that, it ruins your life. I happen to know George Zimmerman. I met him after his shooting. He was a decent kid. The reason after all those weeks of trial he was acquitted was that the evidence clearly showed that it had happened exactly as he had said it was, that he had not been the aggressor in any way, and that he had been the victim. Yet today, George Zimmerman lives under an assumed name. He's one of the most hated men in America because the whole Ben Crump and Ryan Jewelison cabal had painted this trope of the sweet innocent child skipping down the street with a box of Skittles, and the evil white racist kills him to satisfy his bloodlust. What had happened there, I think, the parents of Trayvon Martin were decent people. You know, whenever there's a criminal kid, there's always somebody who says, "Oh, it's the parents' fault, bad parenting." I do not buy that. The kid's mom had a master's degree and a very responsible job. His dad actually had been a gangbanger in his young days in Southern California, but he was one of those people who truly had turned his life around and become a productive citizen. And the kid lived in the Miami area. The reason he was in Orlando, hundreds of miles away, was the dad. They had divorced. The parents had divorced by that time, but amicably. It was like tough love. It was like the mom saying, "Look, I can't do anything with the kid. He's getting in all kinds of trouble. What can you do?" But
Mhm.
you know, the bad guys don't, unless they're a member of a cartel or a crime family, don't let their family know what they're up to. All they knew was our 17-year-old son is dead. He was unarmed, and we want justice or revenge. And sometimes it's kind of hard to separate the two. They went to attorney Benjamin Crump, who in the years since has become the leading plaintiff's attorney on cases like that. And Crump in turn went to Ryan Jewelison, a very high-powered PR guy. If you go to his website, he advertises litigation support. And in cases like this, the litigation support means you show him who you want to get money from. He will use his high-powered media connections to make it a cause celeb, make that person the most hated person of his time, until they're ready to pay anything to make it stop. And once, of course, that winds up with a criminal indictment as well, nobody calls off the criminal indictment, so you still wind up going to trial. So people need to know the potential aftermath. One thing I think the Zimmerman case taught all of us is that they have to do something that I was urging police to do back in the 20th century, and they finally started doing early in the 21st century. Uh, it started with LAPD. They said, look, we remember the riots of 1992, the so-called Rodney King riots. What we need to do when there's a high-profile case, we need to get the truth out as fast as the false accusation gets out, so the public has the truth to compare it to. And they created what you're seeing now all over YouTube. The police department does a review of what we call the critical incident. Says, look, you hear the call come into dispatch with names and addresses redacted. You see the body cams and dash cams of the officers that show what happened. And it shows the public, look, here's what really happened. This is what we're working with now. The investigation continues. We'll keep you apprised. And the departments that are doing that are not experiencing the riots. And the private citizens who do that are not getting Zimmerman. So the thing of it is, Justin, if only one side is out there and one side is false, a lie that is not contradicted with the truth is seen by default as the truth. And it destroys lives in that third court that I was talking about.
Yes, sir.
Anyway, time went on. I've written 20 or so books on the topic. I still enjoy it, still compete every now and then. I'm old and slow and not winning anymore, but it's still fun. That's about it on my end.
That's where the body slows down, the tactics evolved, right?
Yeah, kind of the old age and treasury thing.
Yeah, yeah. So does that bring us up to where you are now in your career?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Cool. Still doing it full time and still loving it.
Awesome.
People ask when I'm going to retire, and I say, why should I retire from fun?
Awesome. Well, hey, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Sure.
Hey guys, Justin with 1791. Thanks for watching. If you're a fan of classic 90s action movies and epic mustaches, then I'm excited to announce to you our new 1791 line of leather shoulder holsters. These are going to come in two different configurations, a vertical carry configuration, like I'm showing over here, and a horizontal carry configuration, like I have in my hand. Each shoulder holster system is going to come with a adjustable harness system, allowing you to modulate this to fit your body. And they're going to come with a double magazine pouch. The magazine pouch is adjustable for retention by adjusting these two retention screws here. And each magazine pouch is going to come with two different snaps, allowing you to size each pouch to fit your magazine. Both the magazine carrier side and the holster side are going to come with a belt securing strap system, allowing you to secure the magazine pouch side and the holster side to your belt to keep them secure while you're on the move. Each holster system is actually going to have a retention snap as well. The horizontal one actually has a thumb brake style retention system. And these are also going to be available in several optics configurations as well. The link will be in the description below, guys. Go and check them out. Thank you. All right, we're back from the break. You guys just watched a product video on a new product that we recently launched called the Nakatomi Special Shoulder Holster. I'm actually wearing one right now in conjunction with my IWB, so I'm wearing two Glock 19s. To quote Doc Holliday from Tombstone, I have two guns, one for each of you. So it's an awesome handcrafted holster like you guys saw in the video. Shoulder holsters are making a bit of a resurgence in our day and age. Moss, did you ever carry a shoulder holster?
Oh yeah.
Do you ever?
Yeah. Today more than ever, I consider it my orthopedic holster. I've got some spine issues going on that are affecting sciatic nerve, and it's just too painful to carry on the hip. The shoulder holster takes the weight. Yeah.
Evenly disperses it, nice and comfortable. It's actually a handy way to carry in your pajamas too. Like I don't know about you, but I carry all the way up until the moment where I go to bed, and you know, I'll shower, like hang out with my wife in the evening. Sometimes I'll throw on my shoulder holster underneath my bathrobe and just got it with me in case I gotta, like, you know, get up and walk somewhere else. And I also have young kids, so it's not safe to leave guns laying around on horizontal spaces. So yeah, shoulder holsters
I'll tell you, what you're doing is what's called home carry. And all the gun forums, when somebody mentions that, somebody says, oh, you must live in a horrible place. Oh, you must be paranoid. They need to study how fast home invasions go down. There isn't always time to get one. And almost every cop I know who investigated a serious home invasion that ended with rape or murder, from that day on, when their pants were on, their gun was on, even at home.
Yep, exactly. Even though I put 3-inch screws through the latches and locks on my door, like, you know, that's only going to buy me seconds, not minutes. You know, so those seconds can be invaluable, but again, it doesn't turn my house into an impenetrable fortress by any means. So, but. Anyways, from there, Moss, let's get into our shared work history. So for the viewers that aren't really aware, like my current gig, I'm the director of product development at 1791. Prior to that, once I got out of the Navy, I started a small business as a firearms instructor. Through the course of doing that, I trained over 2,500 people in various classes, ranging from concealed carry permit classes to fighting rifle classes. So I taught a lot of stuff to a lot of people. Probably nowhere near as many people as Moss has as alumni. Just for a quick sobering moment, Moss, how many people have you trained?
It's in the thousands. I never kept track.
Okay. Well, I would probably argue it's closer to the maybe the tens of thousands. So you've been at it quite a bit longer than I have. Anyways, when I took my first job in the industry, I ended up closing down my small business as a firearms instructor. It was just a, you know, part-time gig I was doing while I was also doing my full-time job. And anyways, fast forward a few years, I was actually at a trade show for the holster company I was working for at the time. I was at a trade show in Reno, Nevada, and working the booth, busy, and broke away for a lunch break and listened to my voicemails. And all of a sudden, a voice popped on that I recognized, saying something that was like kind of, you know, tragic and startling at the same time. It was Moss. The voicemail went something like this: "Hi, Moss," or Hi, Justin. This is Massad Ayoob from Massad Ayoob Group. I've been brought in as an expert witness under retainer for one of your former students that has been in a fatal shooting. And if you give me a call back at your earliest convenience, I greatly appreciate it, so that we can talk about the details and figure out a way to exonerate your student. And that scared the shit out of me. Immediately, my mind jumped to worst case scenario. Like, I did something wrong, and like I trained someone on something that I shouldn't have, and I'm going to go to prison for whatever. And like, I freaked out. You know, I went from 0 to 60 pretty quick. Immediately, I called a friend of mine, the late James Yeager. And I was like, explain the situation to James. I was like, James, like, I got a call from Massad Ayoob. Like, one of my students killed somebody, and he's being tried with murder and blah, 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 or charged with murder. And James simply said, Justin, calm down. Just chill out. Call Moss back. I'm like, what? He's like, call Moss back. There's two things that you don't know about Moss. Number one, he doesn't take a case that he can't win. Number two, he protects instructors, because he knows that generally instructors are trying to do the right thing and just teach people how to protect themselves. So call him back, give him everything he needs. He'll protect you. I'm like, okay. And I called Moss back, and that brings us to you, Moss. So Moss, did you want to talk about the details? Just for the viewers' understanding, we're going to leave names out of it, just simply because, like, it's a traumatic experience for anyone to go through, and just to, you know, protect their personal life and things like that, we're going to leave names out of it. But Moss, did you want to talk to the details? You were a little bit closer to the details on the trial than I was.
Sure. Basically, the shooting took place about 3 years ago in Aberdeen, South Dakota. Your student was a middle-aged guy, about 56, owned a construction business, and his home was attached to a very large building, you know, the size of a warehouse, which is where the shooting went down. Now, he had a couple of kids, one of whom, when she was 17, had fallen in love with a big, handsome dude that I guess had a good line of patter, who was in his late 20s. And our client, you can imagine, wasn't too happy about that. At the same time, he wanted his daughter to know he trusted her. So relationship began. It turned out that at 17, this guy had partial custody of 3 little boys from a previous marriage. And she turned out to have great maternal instincts. The kids instantly fell in love with her. She loved the kids. And that was one thing that kept her in the relationship, as it began to turn abusive. Now, the gentleman in question, who wound up being the deceased in this murder case, he had owned an excavation business, and our client lent him, he made some contacts for him where he could get jobs, lent him a lot of equipment, lent him a great deal of money. And then finds out the guy is abusing his daughter, had beaten his daughter, and on one occasion had raped his daughter. The relationship was getting pretty rocky on the night in question, which was New Year's Eve of would have been the night of December 31, 2021. New Year's Eve, a whole lot of people drink. This guy had an alcohol and drug problem. Started drinking New Year's Eve and kept binging through New Year's Day. He's driving an expensive truck that he had borrowed from our client, who had become the defendant, and driving fish-faced drunk, managed to wreck the thing. So he's the owner of the truck. State police called him. He and one of his employees went down and retrieved the truck. And the boyfriend, of course, has been arrested for DUI. In the car, they find the boyfriend had a loaded Beretta 12-gauge auto shotgun, a loaded Bushmaster AR, and in the pocket of his coat, a loaded Glock 19. Now, brief digression, we actually checked. There were no 3-gun matches going on at that time in the area. And It was, I think the only season open was rabbit season, and at 20 degrees or whatever it was in South Dakota in January, there ain't a whole lot of people that go rabbit hunting, and there ain't a whole lot who do it with an AR-15. So I'll leave it up to your speculation what he was planning to do with those guns. We learned later that he had been very deeply in debt to the tune of perhaps a couple $100,000. None of which could come in at trial because it was not known to our guy. And brief digression, prior bad acts or prior things the guy did who forced you to shoot him, if you didn't know about them at the time, are generally not going to be anything you can introduce in your defense. The rationale being it was not formative. If you didn't have that knowledge, it was not formative to your decision and your action that you took, and therefore the jury's not going to hear it. We have seen some rare exceptions with case law in Arizona and Massachusetts, but that's the situation. When he was taken in and booked, they found the boyfriend was carrying the guy had good taste in weapons, several $100 Benchmade automatic knife. They put that in an evidence locker, or evidence package rather. And when they told him, when he bonded out, they gave it back to him and he put it back in his pocket. Now he calls the girlfriend, our guy's young daughter, and asks her to pick him up at the police station, late at night. And she said, "Look, I'm here. It's night. I'm taking care of your 3 little boys. I can't go down there and get you." Starts screaming at her, threatening to kill her. And after everything else that's going on, she's like, "That's it. When you get back, you and I are done." The guy calls his long-suffering ex-wife, who had been putting up with the same thing in their marriage. She picks him up, and he asks her to drive to our client's place. And while they're driving there, he asks her if she wants to get back together with him, and she says, "No way in hell." So what we've got there is a guy who has just been rejected by what may be the only 2 women who ever loved him. And this is probably something that's feeding into the anger that's about to be expressed. She drops him at our client's place. His 17-year-old daughter she takes the 3 little boys, and the daughter and her 13-year-old sister, also our client's daughter, are present, along with a fellow who works for our client. That fellow is about 300 pounds. Later, the prosecution will say you had a 300-pound linebacker to protect you. You didn't need a gun. When this guy became violent, the 300-pound linebacker had done nothing but stand there like a zombie. He had been swilling down Bud Light all night and smoking a few joints.
It's not the size of the dog in the fight; it's the size of the fight in the dog.
Amen, brother. So picture now we've got this long area in the warehouse garage. It looks like a warehouse. It was really a garage for our guys' equipment and stuff. Over here, the 2 daughters. The guy comes in. He starts screaming, raving. He's going to kill our client. He's going to kill his daughter. He's going to find his own 3 kids and kill them. And he's going to kill the baby sister. He's going to kill everybody. Now, what had happened, our guy, when he and the linebacker picked up the truck and managed to get it home, he was the one who had discovered the 3 guns, and he unloaded them and put them in his safe. So he is acutely aware that this guy tonight has been carrying. He also knows the guy carries a gun all the time. Sometimes, usually a little J-frame hammerless, either in a boot or a pocket, sometimes in a vest. He's been known to threaten other people with it, although this was not known at that time to our client. We found that out later through the private investigator, who was excellent. So arguments begin. Our guy is 5'5", 5'6". He weighs maybe 130-some pounds. The 28-year-old boyfriend, the psycho guy, is 6'3". So we've got elements now of disparity of force. And let me explain for any of our listeners who aren't familiar with that. The general public thinks it's never shoot an unarmed man. It could never be self-defense. That's simply not true. Uh, you are only allowed to use deadly force in a situation of immediate, otherwise unavoidable danger of death or great bodily harm, like crippling injury to oneself or to some other person you have the right to protect. That situation is created by simultaneous presence of three criteria: ability, the power to kill; opportunity, the capability of immediately employing that power, the immediacy element, if you will; and finally, jeopardy, meaning manifest intent. He's manifesting by words and or actions an intent to kill or cripple someone he has no right to harm. The ability factor was present here multiple times over. First, our guy does not know whether or not this man has armed himself between bonding out from the state police barracks and showing up on his doorstep. He knows the guy has been spending the day carrying loaded, serious weaponry. I think he knows the guy normally carries. The guy does, in fact, have a knife in his pocket. But first, the age elements. Now, age by itself doesn't necessarily constitute a disparity of force. But our guy was 56 years old, not as fast as he used to be. The other guy's 28 years old and prime of life. Other guy is 6'3". Our guy's 5'5". The other guy has threatened to kill, in front of witnesses who testified at trial, has threatened to kill him and his entire family, okay, and his own family. So we've got a pretty dangerous person here. He orders him to leave. The guy refuses to leave. He draws the pistol you taught him to shoot, the Kimber Micro 9 that when he bought it came with a Crimson Trace laser guard on the trigger. Puts the beam on the guy, takes an isosceles stance, and tells him, get out. Now, another element of disparity of force is present. Attacking handicapped certainly is a disparity of force element. Our guy has a on his gun hand, his right hand, wrist to hand from recent carpal tunnel surgery. At one point, he's on video from the security camera walking between people, and he shifts the gun to his other hand because this hand is clearly hurting. So the guy starts moving toward the family. He aims at him in an isosceles stance and backs him up toward the door. The prosecutor said, oh, that made him the initial aggressor moving forward. He is interspersing himself between the danger and the family. It is normal human behavior, literally mammalian behavior. Backs the guy up to until he's just outside the view of the security camera. All the security, they're in the corner by the door. The family's over on this side. Our guy and the violent man are over on this side by the door, near the door in the corner. All the camera can see of the other guy is the tip of one boot. There's no sound, but you can see that, you can tell there's yelling going on. Suddenly, you see a muzzle flash from our guy's gun. And what's happened, he said the man had begun to lunge at him. He described him as the eyes bugging out of his head, veins pulsing in his forehead, the hands clenching and unclenching, which you and I and many of your viewers will recognize as this clear-cut assaultive behavior indicators. Now, the guy starts coming forward. We determined from the video that they were 5 feet apart, chest to chest. He's starting to come toward him, and the hands are rising. It's obviously a disarming attempt. It can't be anything else. If he was trying to escape, the door was to his left, while our guy was straight in front of him. Our guy fires one shot. You see a little orange tongue of flame come out of the Kimber, and instantly effective. It was a 9mm ball, 115 grain Winchester white box, from Walmart or something. Enters chest, exits back, pierces the heart, and the big guy falls to his left. Now he falls into view of the camera. He's down on his left side, perpendicular to our guy. Our guy lowers his pistol, takes the support hand off the gun, stares at him for an instant, and then the guy's down on his left side, known to be right-handed, and his hand goes to his right pocket. Okay, which our guy knows he often carries a gun in his pocket, knows he's been carrying a gun that day, knows that he's threatened to kill everybody in there. You see he comes up just one-handed. He said he didn't have time to take a two-hand hold. You see the laser dot on the guy's neck. Another shot is fired, and he goes limp. The police are called. Our guy waives his Miranda rights and gives a very, very lengthy interview. Even though he's not feeling well, he's a diabetic, and he's been through a horrible, traumatic thing. All of us will tell you, wait at least 24, 48 hours, maybe more is preferable, and at least one full sleep cycle before you try to answer detailed questions about
and have your attorney present.
But no lawyer present.
Yeah.
So
I'm just saying you should have your attorney present before, like, even though if you're a good person, you have a good heart, and you have good recollection of the situation, you shouldn't just spew details of the situation to law enforcement without first consulting your legal attorney. So
exactly, small things are going to loom large in immediate short-term memory. Really scary things may be so scary the memory suppresses them for a while, and you don't mention it. And later, when you bring it up in court, you look like you're a liar making up an excuse. They will ask you the questions in the order in which they occur to the interrogator. And later, it's going to sound like you were saying things happened in that sequence. And there's just so many things that can go wrong with it. Our guy handled it actually quite well. He made no major mistakes. Because they were jumping around with the questions, it was a little out of order in the way things happened, but it was easy enough in court to get it in order. He wound up being arrested. The grand jury, without hearing from him, as I recall, indicted him for the highest level of murder in South Dakota. And if he'd been convicted, the mandatory sentence would have been life without parole. And they told me the death penalty was not exactly off the table there either. I found out later, I was told later, that during the grand jury presentation, not only was there no mention of self-defense elements, but one person who was there said they were expressly instructed not to consider self-defense. So, of course, cited.
Interesting.
And the trial was in March of 2022. It cost him, by the time it was done, it cost him 6 figures. Good news was, I think we can't mention the attorneys. He had 2 great attorneys. Marshall Loverin was lead counsel. I understand he's since become a judge. And the community should be happy to have a man like that sitting on the bench. And the other was Bill Gerdes, who was probably more experienced in self-defense cases than any other attorney in the area. Bill did the opening, I believe, and Marshall did the close, both of which were absolutely crushing. Now, where I came into it, expert witness on dynamics of violent encounters, sometimes called force science, and homicide incident reconstruction, and training standards. Which is where you came in. One of the things we found over the years, a winning strategy in these cases, police or civilian, you show the jury 2 things. The defendant did what they were trained to do, and what they were trained to do was, in fact, the right thing to do, which means we need documentation of training. I found over the years, there are X number of instructors who will be happy to take your money, but will not speak if afterwards you get in trouble for doing what they taught you to do. And I've even seen it on the police side. You, my friend, were a stand-up. Now, you unfortunately had been in the process of a move by automobile cross-country during the trial. So tell the listeners what a hassle that was and why you were unable to be there personally.
Sure, yeah. So in between all this, like, I had taken a job for a holster company that was over on the East Coast, And in 2019, I moved there with my family. I was in Virginia Beach, and then we were in North Carolina for a little while, kind of through COVID and the riots and all that stuff. And I didn't overly appreciate the location that I was living during those types of environments. So I had made the command decision to say, like, hey, I'm going to go approach work, and I'm going to ask them to work remote, and I'm going to move home. So we did that. And the day that we had the moving truck scheduled and like this big cross country, like I think it was like 1,700-mile like move with my wife and 2 young kids, was exactly when the trial was going on. So that's where we had worked together to where I crafted a sworn affidavit and provided my curriculum to be able to give you guys the things that you would need to be able to successfully exonerate our guy. So
You did a great job with that. I was allowed to present it because talking to you and getting that from you had been part of my research on the case. And that was all presented to the jury. And folks, what that does, that's the reason to get training. Basically, it turns the jury into fellow graduates of the class. The jury ends up knowing what you know about what was supposed to be done, what's expected of you in a crisis of that type. And we were able to show that the ability factor was there clearly. He's attempting to disarm a man whose gun hand is crippled. He's able to do it immediately, and he had expressed the homicidal intent, the jeopardy factor. What I try to do in all these cases, it's something that often gets missed by the defense. The prosecution, the plaintiffs, their whole thing is look at this awful thing, a gunshot wound that tore away flesh and tore away the life of poor innocent Sonny. We need to show the jury what would have happened if you hadn't pulled that trigger. So I always try to do what we call demonstrative evidence. We'll do a video with someone, roughly the same size or a similar size disparity. Do a disarm in this case, or how quickly they could have reached you with a knife, how quickly they could have drawn their gun, whatever. In this case, we put me 5 feet away from a guy who had very strong hands, not crippled hands. We used a dummy gun the size of a Kimber Micro 9. And what we were using then was an app called Coach's Eye. It's no longer supported, but you can find similar software elsewhere. What that does, you do the video, and then it superimposes over the video a counter going to the 100th of a second. So you can start frame by frame. From the moment I started to move forward to when I had the gun out of the role player's hands and had pulled the trigger was 2.23 seconds. Now, the reason I tell people always have it on video and be able to replicate it in the courtroom is this. And this was an interesting landmark for me in this particular case. I found over the years, judges are very selective about what demonstrations they'll allow a jury to see. One judge might say, look, you're not showing them a video, you're not showing them some cartoon you put together with CGI. I know how that stuff works. You want to demonstrate something, counselor, you and your expert do it right there in front of the jury. I've seen other judges who were the exact opposite. You're not going to dance around in my courtroom and play act. You want to show them something, put it on video, I'll let them see the video. From decades before to that day in 2022, I'd seen judges keep out one or keep out the other. I had never seen them keep out both until that day. Judge wouldn't allow either. So, no problem. We went with plan C. We had the video right there if needed, and I brought the dummy gun if needed, in case the judge's decision changed. And during my direct examination by Marshal Lovren, I was asked, did you do reenactments to determine how quickly the defendant could have been disarmed and killed with his own gun? Yes, sir, I did. How long did it take? From the first moment of movement, of my movement, to the gun going off at his head was 2.23 seconds. And how did you determine that? We did it on video with a Coach's Eye app and blah, 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 blah. And I glanced over at the prosecutor, who was absolutely fuming, because he knew if he brought it up, he'd open the door for the jury to see either the demonstration or the video.
Master class.
Well, know where the Ayoob's law number one. Know where the attack is going to come. Have a counterattack already in place and poised for launch. The 300-pound linebacker, as the prosecutor called him, had changed his story. He originally told the police, "Yeah, the guy lunged at my boss, and my boss shot him." Then he goes in and said, "No, I saw the whole thing. He never lunged." Well, I played the video and showed them here at the moment of the lunge. The 300-pound linebacker is looking over here, smoking a cigarette. The shooting takes place behind him, and he has a startled response and starts to move away. Of course, he didn't see anything. He wasn't looking at it. And common sense, if you're not looking at something, you will not see it. And that's why he didn't see the lunge.
So either way you slice it, he lied. Like he lied about seeing it, and he lied about not seeing it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wild.
So we were able to show the draw. If he'd had a gun in the pocket, I think I used a Ruger LCR, that laying down semi-supine down on the left side with a gun in the pocket of a pair of jeans like his, from where the hand was when he was shot to me drawing and firing at the target was, I think, 1.63 seconds. So we established the reason for the second shot. So first shot was to stop the disarm. Second shot, he appears to be reaching for a weapon. And that's another thing a lot of people fail to understand. It's what's called a furtive movement shooting. It's a movement consistent with going for a weapon, but not reasonably consistent with anything else within the totality of the circumstances, which is what the courts demand that we always take into consideration. So basically, we had established the man came there threatening to kill. He came there, he had been heavily armed. He was majorly drunk. I forget his blood alcohol content, but it was off the charts. The ability, opportunity, and jeopardy were present. Here's the training. Here's what this man was trained to do by Justin Hoffman, a certified instructor for the state. And these are the standards to which he acted. These are exactly the standards to which he performed. And the jury got it. Marshall did what I was told was a splendid closing argument. The jury was out for a few hours and came back with not guilty on all counts. That ended an ordeal that cost well into six figures. And that unfortunately happens too often. One reason I wore this particular shirt today, Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. I've been involved with them since their beginning around 2008. Now, that was created by Marty Hayes, who still runs the organization. It's not insurance. It's a mutual support group for armed citizens who get into trouble in shootings. We've had 30-some clients so far, none of whom have had to pay a dime once accepted. There were a small handful we turned down. If it's obvious you committed a serious crime, we're not going to spend the members' money to defend you. But virtually all of them have come out with the best possible outcome. And it's for anyone interested, it's armedcitizensnetwork.org. I've been told I'm a good salesman for them, but I have to explain, no, salesmen get a commission. I simply am involved in it because I believe in it, and I believe in what they do. But I'm
taking more notes. It sounds like a good organization.
Yeah, Marty and I saw so many people bankrupted, losing their homes, losing their business to pay for legal defense. That he really started the post self-defense support industry. ACLDN is the one I work with. I'm on the advisory board with Manny Capelson, John Farnham, Tom Gibbons, Carl Wren. We've got a bunch of people who've been there with literally combined centuries of experience. The other reason to belong to ACLDN is something similar. What a lot of people don't realize is with cases like this, where you did the right thing, and we know we're going to be able to show you did the right thing. it gives us way more bargaining power to kill the case or greatly reduce the charges or the amount of a settlement. And often the only reason they make a settlement is because it's cheap, way cheaper than going to trial. I've talked to guys who were told by the investigators or the prosecutors, look, here's the deal. You can try to defend yourself. We'll still probably convict you, but it's going to cost every penny you got. Your family's going to lose their home, and all of that. And this allows you to say, sir, I'm not worried about that. Someone else is paying the bill. It takes away a lever that they use for leverage against you, if you will. If you've ever heard that certain lawsuits are legalized extortion, that's absolutely true.
Mm-hmm.
If I went to you today and said, hey, Mr. Hoffman, you never met me, but I've come to make your life a living hell. I'm going to call press conferences. I'm going to say that you're crazy, you're a racist, you're a danger to your society. I'm going to try to get you put in prison. And I'm going to take every penny you got that you ever saved for your family. I'll take your house. I'll take your car. But give me $100,000. I'll go away. Now, you and I know that would be felony extortion. If you did that in front of a cop, they'd arrest you, for God's sake, and you'd end up going to jail over it. Unless you're a member of the State Bar Association, in which case you've just had your first settlement conference. And I would kind of like to be able to tell that kind of embarrassment to the legal community, sir, you're not going to get anything from me. I'm covered. Somebody else is paying for my defense. You have a nice day. You go ahead and run this case. We're going to beat you. We've got the truth, and you and your lying experts can't do anything about it. We know who your experts are. They're prostitutes, and we have the Consumer's Guide to Impeachment, and we'll make a mockery of them on the witness stand. You will lose. You will have to explain to your senior partners at the law firm why you pissed away 6 figures worth of their money bringing this case and got nothing in return. Go ahead, Ace. Your move. Mm-hmm. It's amazing how often within a week they come back and say, upon review, we have determined that this is not the right case for us, and that's over. Or they make an offer so cheap that that they decide to settle out of court. So it's like the gun itself. The great majority of these things, the deterrent effect of knowing that you can beat them at their own game is enough to neutralize the threat. And when it isn't, going to court like we did in the case you and I did, and we do it in court.
Wasn't it
funny?
Wasn't it in the book Armed in America? I forget who wrote it. It was actually quoted in the fighting pistol curriculum at tactical response, but in the book Armed in America, I believe it states that 1 in 30 times that a gun is presented for self-preservation actually has to be used. So that means 29 previous times a gun gets presented in a self-defense environment. And that by itself is enough to deter that threat. I think that's kind of what you were getting at there, right?
Every study has shown that. The Wright Rossi study back in the 70s or 80s, the work of Professor John Lott today, the California Attorney General study that goes back to sometime in the 1970s. The deterrent effect, when the other side realizes I've bit off more than I can chew, this could hurt me more than it hurts the person I was about to hurt. I'm cutting my losses and getting out of here now.
Moss, how many times have you been an expert witness in like self-defense type trials like this? Have you kept count?
Well, I've lost count of how many times I've been an expert witness sometime in the 80s. Most of them we kill without going to trial. So the trials, I'd say maybe plus minus 50. But most of the time, we're able to just kill it without going to trial. Let the other side realize it's untenable. And if the politics of it is such that they're going to keep it going, the greed is enough they're going to keep it going, then you go in and you beat them at their own game in court.
That's the mark of not too long ago, someone asked me to define expert, and I just simply said, I think it was actually in a class. Yeah, it was in a class I was taking. Actually, I think it was in the land navigation class I took a few weeks ago. Someone asked, like, what defines an expert, or what makes an expert? And I just piped up and said, someone that's forgotten more about a certain subject matter than most people will ever learn in their lifetimes. And you've done so many of these expert witness type situations that, sir, like, you are one of the foremost experts on this topic, and I'm very grateful to have you on.
Well, it's kind of me to say so, but Marty Hayes, who also started out as a cop and an expert witness, he and I are not getting any younger. So for the last few years, we've been doing 1 or 2 deadly force instructor classes a year that include the better part of a day on how to properly handle expert witness testimony or material witness testimony when you're speaking for your own student.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody's interested, go to MassadAyoobGroup.com. Deadly force instructor class. We are doing one in Texas and one in Ohio in 2025.
I think I'll have to sign up for one of those.
Hey, love to have you.
What, Moss, what percentage of instructors roger up and say, like, you know, I'm going to help my student, and, like, I'm going to provide a sworn affidavit, or, like, I'm going to go get up on the stand? Like, what percentage, from what you've dealt with?
I can't give you a percentage because we don't have big enough a pool who've been asked the question or put in the position.
Okay.
I can think of at least one who will not do it because it turns out he has a criminal record. Now, you mentioned our mutual friend, the late James Yeager. James and I both testified for the defendant in one case in Arizona. And let me tell you, Yeager had trained the defendant. Yeager was a stand-up guy. Did a great job, I think. He taught what he had taught a student, why. And that's why one of the reasons the student's a free man today. I've also talked to one in a certain city, a police department instructor. His officers had to kill a guy in the line of duty and is being made a sacrificial lamb and charged with murder. He says, I don't go to court for that. And I said, well, I'm afraid we're going to have to subpoena you. He says, if you subpoena me, I'll say I never remember teaching him anything. I'm sitting here thinking, you soulless son of a bitch, and they gave you a badge of power over people. They made you the instructor of staying alive for the men and women who go out there at night, put their lives on the line, and you won't stand up and speak for them.
That's the very definition of cowardice.
Fortunately, there are relatively few of those. But one thing to do when you're going to take training, ask the instructor beforehand, are you prepared to testify for one of your students if they get in trouble doing what you taught them to do? It's in my last will and testament that for 20 years after my death, all the teaching materials, all the records from both schools will be held by the executor of my estate and available on friendly subpoena for any of my graduates who need them. My deal with my students is you get in trouble for doing what I told you to do, I'll speak for you for free. I'm not charging you for it.
Well, you're a stand-up guy, sir.
No, it's simply right. If you took their money to teach them to do something, they did what you taught them, you have an absolute obligation to stand behind it, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you have a moral compass and you're a stand-up guy. There are people that are not stand-up guys, like that firearms trainer, law enforcement instructor that you were mentioning. I would not count him among stand-up guys. So, oh man, that's terrible. So that brings up one thing I wanted to mention for those watching, and Mas touched on it before too. The importance of seeking training, and really, moreover, the importance of seeking out a reputable trainer. Do a little research. Maybe try and find someone that has trained there. Just ask around and ask the right questions. Reach out, and you should most definitely talk to your instructor and have a phone call with them. Try to have a phone call with them and talk to them before you ever train with them, before you ever sign up. That's my personal headspace. Sure. Because you can learn a lot from a conversation.
Yeah, that, you got a copy of their CV, curriculum vitae. I'm sorry, I hang out with lawyers so much. Their resume. Attorneys don't speak English and they can speak Latin. But get a copy of their resume, and the resume should not be a brag sheet. The resume is the curricula vitae means literally the course of your life. Go and check it and make sure they've been where they say they've been and they've done what they say they've done. There's some people out there who everything from stolen valor to greatly inflated egos.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Awesome.
let me offer a free source, by the way, for your listeners.
Yeah.
Back around 2007, 2008, an article appeared in the Journal of the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers called Champion. The title of the article was Defending the Self-Defense Case. It was written by attorney Lisa Steele. Now, I know Lisa. She is probably our leading appellate attorney who specializes in self-defense cases that went wrong in the trial level and resulted in an unmeritorious conviction. Everything she says in that long article that was written for her peers on how to not screw up a perfectly good self-defense case by using your typical guilt mitigation strategies. And she made the point that the trained person is so much more defensible because their training can be brought in and ipso facto shared with the jury. Once the jury knows what your training was, the jury essentially becomes your classmates. They're not vulnerable anymore to the BS from watching TV of how shootings go. And I have to echo what she said. The trained person is much, much more defensible. A police department will have a training bureau, or at least a small department will at least have a training officer who keeps track of them. When you're the private citizen, you've got to keep track of your own. You've got to be your own training officer. Keep your certificates, keep your notes from classes, and every now and then go over those notes. A colleague of mine, Michael Izumi, came up with a brilliant idea of taking all your notes, copy them, save them multiple places, but put one set of those in an envelope and mail it to yourself, registered mail. When it comes back, leave it sealed, don't open it. And if there ever is a problem, there will be other copies of the same documents because your attorney has to show it to the other side to get it in. But when that envelope is opened in the courtroom, it's literally been signed, sealed, delivered, and dated by the U.S. Postal Service. It proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that these things were known to you prior to the act for which you're being judged. And therefore, the other side cannot keep it out by arguing it's some bullshit that your hired gun lawyer came up with to bamboozle the jury.
So one other thing I like asking my guests is like, what kind of guiding philosophies kind of govern your day-to-day life up to and including the warrior inside you? Like, what kind of guiding philosophies do you have that maybe you can share with our viewers?
Well, the old, people make fun of the old analogy of the wolf, the sheep, and the sheepdog, but there's really some truth in that. And what you got to remember is the sheep can't distinguish between the wolf and the sheepdog. All they know is it has canine teeth. They don't, and they fear it. And bear that in mind. I'm obviously an advocate for the armed citizenry and the Second Amendment. At the same time, I recognize there are people who have been traumatized with firearms. The dad blew his brains out with a 12 gauge and they found the body. Their brother was murdered in a gang thing or something. And we have to understand that. We have to, as I said this year at the Gun Rights Policy Conference, historically, our side has had law on our side and logic on our side. Every honest scholarly interpretation of the Second Amendment found what was ultimately found in Heller versus District of Columbia, that it has nothing to do with the National Guard, and it is absolutely a personal right as well as a militia obligation, if you will, at a time when every able-bodied potential fighter was the militia.
Mm-hmm.
We have logic on our side. We all have fire extinguishers today. When I was born, the only people who kept them at home were firefighters. And finally, society figured out that fire starts in the kitchen. You've got to get to the phone. You've got to call, dispatch. Dispatch has to call the fire department. The guys have to suit up. They got to get there. And by that time, the whole house is involved in flame. And if you've got a fire extinguisher right there, you kill it in its nest, then it's a few $100 in smoke damage. At the time I was born, mid 20th century, if you went to the family doctor and said, "Show us how to do closed chest cardiac massage," which is what they called CPR back then, they would have looked at you like you were nuts. They said, "Go to medical school if you want to learn that. That's what we do." They figured out. I'm sure all your listeners are trained in CPR and hopefully stop the bleed and all that. Simply because once the heart stops, in 5 minutes, irreversible brain death is setting in. And the figure we keep hearing for average emergency response time nationwide is 11 minutes. Do the math. And society figured out if someone right there when it happens is capable of dealing with it and holding the line against death until the professionals can get there, we're going to save a whole lot more lives. The defensive firearms, oddly enough, we're both carrying Glock 19s today. The defensive firearm.
I've got two.
Well, I've got one, but I've got a J frame.
Okay.
But
we should talk about backup guns after we get done with this topic. So
sure.
Go ahead.
Basically, the function is the same as the fire extinguisher. It's a tool for the first responder to hold the line against death or crippling injury until the designated professionals can get there to take over. Knowing CPR doesn't mean you're a paramedic. Having a fire extinguisher doesn't mean you're a firefighter. And as Jeff Cooper said, having a gun doesn't make you a gunfighter any more than having a violin makes you a violinist. At the same time, each is a tool for the first responder there at the scene to save life. And it's the point that I was making at GRPC this year is the other side constantly parades the grieving loved ones of the murder victims. We have to show them the faces of the survivors, the faces of all those people who are alive because they had a gun. Those of us who are alive today because our fathers and grandfathers had a gun, or they wouldn't have lived to see us born.
Yep. I know my family's alive because my great-great-grandfathers had guns when they settled in South Dakota in 1884, I believe, is when we homesteaded. And I've actually got one of my ancestors' old cap and ball muzzle-loading shotguns that he used to defend the property with. But yeah.
Cool. I've got a 1903 Colt 32 Auto that my grandfather shot an armed robber with.
Yours is probably in a little bit better condition than mine, though. Mine must have stopped working and didn't have access to a gunsmith, so it was used to reinforce a fence post for a few decades. So all I got is a barrel and an action. But
yeah, but you got history, brother.
Yeah. Hey, you brought up the fact that you have a J frame. I've actually been experimenting with carrying a backup J frame as well. There's a lot of merits to a revolver, whether your backup gun be a revolver or semi-automatic. Let's talk about backup guns a little bit, man.
Sure. Well, basically, for the private citizen, it's the same function as it would have for a police officer. Your primary could jam. Your primary could be taken from you, knocked out of your hand in the course of a fight, rendered inoperable. If you're in South Dakota in deep winter wearing heavy clothing, you might not be able to get to the spare magazine under your coat as fast as you can get to the spare gun in your jacket pocket.
The New York Reload.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, people say, well, the New York Reload, of course, was back when they carried all revolvers. And they told me when I was studying with NYPD, about 90% of the cops carried a second gun on the job. So because 6 shots, in a second and a half, you're out of the fight and you have to reload. I think for the private citizen, the single biggest advantage it has is it allows you to arm a trusted other person if there's a sudden emergency. My wife and I go places where I'm legal to carry and she's not. She is a multi-time Florida Georgia regional women's champion and was twice top female at the Polite Society match at the Tactical Conference. all of which does no good if there's no gun for her. Now, the reason I carry the double action hammerless, much like yours, yours looks like a 642, mine is 340 M&P, is, and I'm not going to have time if I've got a retired New York cop who's never been allowed to carry a handgun with manual safety on it. Say, hey, you got to work the safety catch, and up is safe, down is fire. If I hand them a traditional double action auto, which all their guns have been double action, including the autos, double action only, I'm not going to have time to say, hey, after the first shot, the trigger's going to stay back. Doesn't mean it's broken, means it's working. And they're not going to, and we still see this happening on police body cams. They get into a shooting, the thumb goes behind the slide, and they jam the pistol on the first shot.
Yep.
A double action only hammerless revolver, there's no way they can screw it up. Anybody competent with a gun is going to be able to competently handle that. Then they're also, frankly, just for the shape of them, they're faster out of the pocket. They're less likely to snag on a pants cuff coming out of an ankle holster. So the snub-nosed revolver, particularly in the ones I prefer, the hammerless, are really the last bastion of the revolver in law enforcement. And for many people, go into the gun shop. You'll see on a huge layout of auto pistols. Might be a shelf of metal ones. The rest are going to be polymer. May or may not have optical sights already on them. And a small shelf of revolvers that's probably going to be 2-inch J-frames and LCRs and Kimber K6s.
Couple of big hunting magnums, maybe, and that's about it.
Yeah.
The medium-sized revolver era is like all but dead. It's either really, really small or really big,
Yeah. It still makes an excellent starter gun for home defense for people who are new.
Yeah.
Particularly people that don't have strong hands or wrists for working slides. And
yeah, if that's what you got, don't poo-poo it. But I'm just saying, like, sociologically in the gun culture, like the age of the medium-sized six-shot revolver, you just don't see people carrying that. You see people carrying the teeny tiny J frames as a backup gun, or a big heavy magnum frame, because a revolver makes the best frame for a handgun magnum. I mean, it's just kind of the way it is. So, but I've actually been experimenting with a different way to carry my backup gun. You might get a kick out of this. So, like, I don't overly love ankle carry, just because, like, I have fallen into that fad of, like, wearing, more up-to-date jeans that they're not so baggy around the ankles. You know what I mean? I'm not going to, like, go all Victoria's Secret here and, model for you guys, but most of my pants don't really, like, have enough room in the ankle for an ankle gun. So I've actually been, I carried my Glock 19 on my 3 o'clock hip. I carry a reload on inside the waistband on the offhand hip. But I've been playing around with doing an inside the waistband holster at the appendix position for my J-frame. So basically my J-frame and my Glock 19 are real close to each other. The reason why I've started doing that is because, number one, in a bad breath distance fight, which statistically is what it's going to be, it's going to be inside of 7 yards. You should be able to protect your gun and or guns with one hand, according to, like, modern defensive tactics training. So if I bring my arm down, I can trap and cover the J frame that's at the appendix position, and with my elbow I can protect the Glock 19. And the reasons why I want to try and start carrying that way is because, like, there's tons of advantages that come with a Glock 19 or with a Glock 19. Glock 19s are awesome. But there's a ton of advantages that come with carrying a J-frame. Number one, especially for bad breath distance shooting, if you get into, like, literally a wrestling match with this, armed and dangerous felon or whatever, you can press that J-frame up against the person that you're fighting and just shoot. You can't do that with any automatic gun and expect it to work, because it will go out of battery. They're historically more reliable than automatics. I'm not going to say that they don't jam, like the common trope that we hear. The people that say that revolvers don't jam are because we don't have a school of thought of revolvers anymore in the 21st century. We have a school of thought of automatics. Back when when you were a younger man, when you were issued a revolver, there was a school of thought of revolvers, and people knew full well that, you know, bullets would slide forward in the casing and cause the cylinder to jam up. And there was malfunctions that happened with revolvers too. But statistically, they're more reliable than an automatic. I also carry it right there because it's easier to get it with my offhand, my offhand, to be able to get from the appendix position versus having to reach all the way around to get my Glock 19 if my right wing is busted or occupied or like holding the door shut or something. And I also want to start carrying it because, like you said, and that's also what James used to say too, for arming a loved one is the greatest advantage of carrying a backup gun. And James used to say, what kind of a man is not willing to carry their lady's weapon for them? You know what I mean? I think there's a lot of fun wisdom in that. But anyways, do you have anything else on backup guns, man?
No, I'm good. It's something I recommend. It's Clint Smith is right when he says 2 is 1 and 1 is none. Anything that your life might depend on, redundant capability of safety rescue equipment makes sense.
Yeah.
I had a case in Florida some years ago, Florida versus Zane Britt, where they made a big deal out of the armed citizen having 2 revolvers. And, he must be, you know, loaded for bear or looking for trouble. And I explained, look, the trial took place in Sanford, Florida. I'm sorry. I think it was Sanford. But Central Florida is one of the lightning strike capitals of the planet Earth. And I said, look, I was sitting here in this courtroom, counted out how many dollars and cents we were going to need for lunch and parking, and left the rest on the night table. None of us came here in a car that didn't have a spare tire. And if right now, if somebody in here has a heart attack and has to go to the hospital, none of us wants to go in an ambulance that only has 1 oxygen tank. And if it turns out we need a quad bypass to survive, and one of those lightning storms is going on, we don't want to have it happen in a hospital that doesn't have a generator in the basement. It's the exact same principle, redundant capability of safety rescue equipment. And the jury agreed, and we want a complete acquittal.
Bingo. Man, you are teaching my viewers a master class right now. I appreciate it. This is awesome. One other thing I wanted to mention, I think it was in James's book, The 4 Pillars of Fighting, and he was quoting from another book. I can't remember the book he was quoting from, but the statistic is as follows. In Memphis in 2015, there was 59 justified homicides. And for those viewing, homicide by itself isn't necessarily a bad thing. If that's all you know, then I might suggest you maybe watch too many movies. But there is such thing as a justified homicide, and there's such thing as an unjustified homicide. Justified homicide is legal use of deadly force. Anyways, in 2015 in Memphis, there was 59 justified homicides. 57 were from civilian self-defense. That's that right there is just an incredible eye-opening statistic of the importance of the John Q. Citizen, Jane Q. Citizen carrying their smoke wagon with them. So
you'll see the same in Chicago. When Illinois finally got concealed carry, I think it was last year, the Chicago Tribune was just outraged to find out more bad guys in the city had been killed by their victims than had been killed by the 13,000 police in the city of Chicago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we've already well, one of my closing questions, like we've already been kind of like alluding to this a ton here, but I always ask my guests. So there's, since post-COVID, there's the statistics vary, 12 million, 15 million, 20 million new gun owners. And my intuition tells me that the vast majority of those people aren't carrying. And there's also a lot of people that have had guns for a long time that don't carry it with them. What would you tell someone that has guns and just doesn't carry it?
Well, I tell them it's your life and it's your family's life. But you got to remember, the gun is not just there to protect you. The gun is there to protect your loved ones. The gun is there, even if you're out alone, to protect the person who earns the money that feeds your children. I'd ask them, look in your wallet, and I expect you've got a piece of government issue ID that's got your street address, not just a P.O. box. Look in your pocket, I expect you have a key to your home. You realize any criminal you allow to kill you or overpower you has a key to your home, knows where that home is, has probably taken your phone and probably left you unable to communicate in any case, and now can go to your home unexpected and attack your family. If you haven't thought of that before, think about it now. Those are the kind of reasons we really carry guns.
I have never thought of that, Moss. As long as I have been in this world of the gun culture, I have not thought about that particular thing. Yeah. Wow. Wow. Yeah. Carry your blaster. Moss, did you have anything else before we close out? I always want to close.
Brother, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay.
Anybody interested in what I do? My work appears.
I was just going to say. I was just going to say, please let the viewers know how to get a hold of you.
Well, sure. You can reach me at MassadAyoobGroup.com. We have classes all over the country. My work appears in Guns Magazine, every issue, American Handgunner, Combat Handguns, Shooting Industry, and Backwoods Home. We've done a bunch of videos on the Wilson Combat YouTube channel that, of course, are available for free. And I've got about 20 books out there. Amazon and Google will get you there.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Moss. It's been an honor. Thank you for sharing your wisdom for our viewers. And for those tuned in, remember, become built to survive. See you guys later.